Today we will talk about arrays in Java. So, arrays are one of the most important data structures in programming. So, arrays are basically used to collect a large amount of data, large number of elements. We will see how they work. But first, let's see why we need arrays. So far we have learned about basic variables that are used to store data. For example, you can store a number in integer, or if you want to store two or three different numbers, you have to create two or three different variables. So for now, our limitation is that a variable can hold only one value at a time. So, for example, an integer can only hold 2, 3, or any other number at once. It can't hold two numbers, like it can't hold 3 and 5 together. It can, for that, you need to create two variables. So, this was. This is the limitation of variables. So suppose you want to make a program, you want to store names of 50 students. So now that becomes a problem. So one solution is to create 50 variables, of course. So but that will become very tedious and messy, and it will be hard to manage. You will lose track of your program and your variables, and more difficulties are that you have to take input on every variable separately. Like you will have to write a lot of lines of code to take input to store values into it. Similarly, to print them, you have to write a very lengthy print statement, or you have to print all those values one by one, line by line. So this is a problem with the normal variables. So to solve these problems, when we want to store a large number of elements, let's say you want to store five values, five names, or let's consider this example, you want to store 50 names, then you can easily store it in an array. So now we look at what an array actually is. So array is like a data structure. Data structures, it just simply means that it is a structured form of storing data. You can think of it like a block. It's like a big box which can hold multiple values in it. So whenever you think of array, you think of like it's a big box which can hold multiple values. So it's like this, and arrays can hold up to thousands of elements. So one array can hold up to thousand values. So this box can be expanded so much that it can hold even thousand values, 1000 integers or 1000 strings. And one thing you need to remember, that an array will only store a single data type. So if you want to store numbers, you create an integer array. Similarly, if you want to store names, you create a string array. So array can hold only each array will only hold one data type at a time, and these elements are held in blocks or cells. So our whole array is divided into several blocks. So this is what an array looks like in memory. So now this is an array. It has been divided into blocks. Now each block contains one element. So this will contain one element like one. This will contain two. Similarly, this will contain any other element like 12. So this is how arrays are allocated. Suppose this contains 6, this might contain 40, and this might contain -2. So as you are seeing here, you can store any integer in these arrays. So and array is called a contagious memory. Why is called contagious memory? Because when you create an array, you allocate that array into your memory, and in your memory, all those blocks, a whole box is created, and each of cells are bundled together. So cells are bundled together. There is no distance between them. They are bundled together. So if you create an array of 1 2 3 5 elements, this is how it will look like. All blocks will be bundled together, and there won't be anything between them. So one block is next to the other. And now let's talk about array size. So each array has a length or size, and it is given to the array when it is created. So let's see, this array has 5 elements. So it has sorry, this array has 6 elements. So it has a size of 6. So size is also known as length. You can call it whatever you want. So size tells us the total number of elements that the array will have. Size will tell us the amount of elements that are present into it. Or you can call it length. Length of an array tells us the total number of elements. And also one important point is that size is given when the array is created. So you can only you can give size while creating an array. You can't change its size later. Size will be fixed. So size can't be changed, and number of cells will be equal to the size. Suppose you create an array of size 6. So therefore 6 contiguous block that will be allocated in memory. These blocks will be next to each other. And now let's talk about index. So what an index is. Uh, Index, so each cell particular address, or each cell has a unique number assigned to it. So this number tells us what block we are currently pointing to, what cell we are currently pointing to. So this is what this does. It index tells us the cell number which we are pointing towards. So the very first block will each block is known as an index, and the very first block is always 0. So very first index. So if we look at our array here, this is the 0 index. So the first index in each array will be 0, and you can store any element at 0 index. So and the last index is size minus 1. So remember that first index is 0, and last is always size minus 1 since we count from 1. So let's try counting and see. So this is an array of size 6. So let's see, the first index is 0, the second is 1, the third is 2, the fourth is third, and fifth is 4, and the sixth is 5. So the main reason why the last index is length minus 1, it is because we count from 0. We don't count from 1, we count from 0. Our first element is 0. If we count from 1, then it will be 6, but it is not allowed in the arrays. So now let's talk about how we create an array. So here I have created an array. So this is a basic array. This is the syntax for creating an array. So this is an integer array since this is the data type. So first of all, you have to write the data type, and then you have to give it name. Then you have to do this stuff. We will see this in detail, but for now, let's just remember that we have created an array of size 5. So an array of size 5 has been created. So as soon as you create an array, 5 blocks in memory like this will be allocated since it has a size 5. And notice that all these blocks are next to each other. There is nothing in between. As I told you before, it is a contiguous memory. That's how the memory is allocated for array. Each element is next to the other. So now you can think that 5 blocks have been created, and each block is known as an index, as we saw in the last slide. So this index is known as zeroth index, or zeroth position. This is known as the first index. This the second. This is the third, and this is the fourth index. So now we have this. We have an array of size 5, and the all default values will be 0. So when you create an array, 5 elements, 5 cells, 5 numbers will be created, and each will have a value of 0. So by default, you can change these values after creating an array, or you can change them while creating an array. We will see that in the code section of this video, this I mean series, and and 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So remember, the very first value is at index 0. So array counting starts from indexing starts from 0, and it goes up to length minus 1. Here our length or size is 5, and it went up to 4. So last index is length minus 1. So you can't go outside it. You can't access the fifth element since there is no fifth index. Uh, so you have to remember this, and you can store any value here. Let's move on. So let's try giving some value. So to access an index, we first write the array name, then we use scare brackets, and then we write the index number. For example, here we wrote 0. So by writing 0, we accessed the 0th index, and we stored 22 on it. So now the 0th index is no longer empty or 0. It is 22 now. So now at 0th index, 22 is stored. Similarly, let's try accessing the second index. So to access the second index, simply do the same thing, just replace 0 with 2 since we are accessing the second index, and let's assign 30 to it. So then our second index, this is our first index, remember this is our second index. So now our second index is 32, and all our indexes are empty. Suppose you want to store, and now you want to access the first index. What you have to do is write elements, and then like here, you have to write the name of the array, and then you have to give it the index, which is 1 in this case, and then you simply have to assign it the value, like let's give it 40. So now this value will be 40, and our index is 1. Let me fix it like this. And our third and fourth index is still 0. We can change its value as well by using this statement. Well, you simply have to change the index. The key thing is that index starts at 0. Never forget this. This is the most crucial part of arrays. And let's look at some advantages of arrays. So the biggest advantage is that it allows us to hold large number of values. Suppose you want to store 1 lakh numbers or names or characters, you can simply easily store them in an array, and they can be easily accessible. You can easily take inputs in arrays. You can easily print the elements of array as compared to variables. So these are the big advantages of array. Now, one more is that it provides random access. So what do we mean by random access? By random access mean we can change any element of it. So for example, suppose you want to change a value at the third index, you can directly access the third index by writing elements and the index of 3. So if you do this, you can simply change the value of it. You don't have to go through the whole array to change one value. You can randomly access any index and store a new value in it. So this is what random access means, and it has a better memory allocation. You will learn more about more data structures, but arrays have better memory allocation since they are contagious. Each element is next to each other, and therefore it allows us easy access to all these. So these were the advantages of arrays. So that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching.